Assalamu alaikum. Thank you so much for coming tonight. My name is Uba Ali. I work for Kate as an event producer. Thank you so much for coming tonight and celebrating this remarkable book with us. This evening we gather to celebrate this remarkable novel, one that speaks to the heart of war, migration, and the everlasting human search of belonging. This book is more than a work of fiction. It's a mirror held up the lives of countless people whose stories often go untold. I want to extend my sincere gratitude to Dr. Nuur Hassan for gifting us this powerful literary fiction. Throughout your writing, you have created a character who feels deeply familiar to many Somalis across the globe and the refugees everywhere who grapple with the challenge of building their own identities while living between multiple countries, cultures, and histories. Your novel reminds us that behind every journey lies a story filled with grief, hope, with the loss and resilience. It explores the theme of home and memory, a family and legacy, elements that shape who we are and who we strive to become. This book is a testament to strengthen those who continue to search for a place where they truly call home or belonging. It's a reminder to all of us the importance of listening and honoring and preserving those stories. My name is Sahal, follows the life of Sahal, a boy growing up in Somalia in the 1970s, whose peaceful childhood was shattered by the outbreak of civil war. He endures displacement, loss, and hardship of life as a refugee. As he moves between countries, he eventually settles in Europe. Sahal finds to rebuild his own identity, honor his past, and shape a future filled with hope, love, and purpose. Let me say a little bit about Dr. Nuur Hassan. He's a UK-based author whose work explores themes of exile, identity, faith, and belonging. My Name is Sahal is his third book and first novel, marks his debut into literary fiction after two earlier works of nonfiction. Known for his reflective and poetic style, Dr. Nuur Hassan's writing draws into silence, displacement, and spiritual depth of the Somali diaspora's experience through the essays, books, and storytelling. He waves a narratives that bridge continents, generations, and capturing both the struggles and the resilience of migrant lives. So thank you so much for Dr. Nuur tonight. Let me give the mic to you, so you can say a bit about the book and the journey and so many stories that you want to share with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. Assalamu alaikum. Good evening, everyone. It's great to be here. First, I want to thank Kate for hosting us here tonight, the volunteers behind the scenes, and all those work that went into this gathering. Second, I want to thank you, the audience, for obviously giving up your Friday evening, coming here in December night. I know some of you will have or have read the book so far, and some of you will be reading tonight. So I want to speak about the book in a way that does not spoil the story of the book. So I'll be very careful. But what I will do is I will want to share the world that you will find in this novel, a world that I think will perhaps maybe bring back a memory. As Obah said, my name is Sahal is my first novel. I wrote several other non-fiction books, but this is me stepping into the literary world. I think it's a very scary world. Anyone who wrote a fiction will understand that. But I'm trying my best, and I hope I've done enough to justify it in this book. It took me 3 years to put this book together, and those 3 years were spent on researching the characters, the emotional journey that Sahal brought to where he is today, and the history of the background and the story in the book. So looking back, the book, I would argue the novel stands on 3 pillars. The first pillar is memory, and the second one is loss. Finally, the third pillar of the book is becoming, in other words, success, triumphant. First pillar, memory, is where everything begins. So Sahal remembers peaceful Somalia before the war, good schools, safe neighborhoods, long afternoons where every auntie acts like your mother, every elder is like your teacher, where memory becomes some kind of a choice. But in this book, memory is not just a nostalgia. It is a contested, it's a political, it's psychology, it is philosophy. It's all about its identity, its self-preservation. It's also a selective. It's not a universal, because Sahal tells what he wants to tell us. So he holds on to some memory, but he also lets go some other memories too. And the second pillar of the book is loss. So loss in this novel is not, again, an abstract, it's not an academic, it's real loss. It's a father buried in Hari. It's a mother separated from her child. It's a neighborhood destroyed and now exists in his stories. It's a letter from loved ones that never arrives. So there's a lot of losses in there as well. So loss creates, in this novel, some kind of urgency, an urgency of memory. And without loss in the book, memory becomes, it doesn't come very strong. It doesn't show up as a strong element, or it might even not exist in the book. Finally, the third pillar of the book is becoming. Obviously, I talked about memory, I talked about losses, but it's not all about gloom, it's not about victimhood, it's not about what I called self-orientalism or self-orientalizing. So it's about becoming as well. So becoming in this novel is, it's actually looking forward to a rebirth of human spirit. It is after everything has been taken away. So it's become, it's the prayer mat, it's the Quran, it is the quiet practice of astaghfirullah al-azim. It's about choosing hope over despair. And therefore, it's also the belief that identity, and you will see that in the book, can be stretched. We talk about all the time identity crisis, but Sahal argues that identity can be stretched without breaking it. Which means you can become, you can be both Somali and British, or both Somali and American, or Somali and Swedish, Somali and Danish. You can rooted and open both ways. Also, becoming is an idea that home itself is somehow contested, because home, Sahal argues, is not where you or your parent were born. Home, he says, is a place where you can live with dignity and honor. So if a place where you can live with dignity and honor, for you, that's a home. That's the argument of Sahal. Now, these 3 pillars support Sahal's life throughout the novel. And in many ways, actually, they describe the lives of many people in our community: loss, memory, and becoming. So I hope the book gives space to those stories. It honors the journey that we all as a community make from our original homes to where we are now and what brought us here. So what I'm going to do is, before I pass the mic to Ubah, I'm going to read a few passages from the book. Again, I will be very careful not to spoil the book. So bear with me. Now, this passage The heading is called Hindiye. So Hindiye, you will discover who Hindiye is. But it's the theme is, it says, now Sahal has got some problems. Sahal is the main character of the book. And he calls it a future once imagined, now reimagined. So something falls apart around him. So he's trying to reimagine his future. Right, so I had not heard her voice in 3 years. I did not know whether she was in Dadaab, Nairobi, or somewhere else entirely. Maybe she was married. Maybe she's waiting. But I knew one thing. If she had any idea where I was, she would have hoped that I would succeed, that I would make it here, get the papers, and start new life. She would have imagined our reunion, a future stitched together after war had torn us apart. A home somewhere in Germany or beyond, maybe children, maybe stability. That imagined future was now broken, scattered across my thoughts like shattered glass. And my parents, 2 old souls trapped in the limbo of Dadaab, had pinned all hopes remaining on me. I was their exit plan, their opportunity for retirement, the chances to live once again as people. Not numbers in refugee registry. Now, with no legal status, I felt that I had failed them too. My rejection did not just close a door, it collapsed a whole building that I had spent years constructing in my mind. And yet, as they say, time is the greatest healer. 2 months after my rejection, something unexpected happened. I began to feel alive again, slowly, quietly, almost without noticing it. I started with the language. I had been going to my integration course more consistently, and with Gunda's help, Gunda is another character you will see in the book, a non-Somali character, had enrolled in reputable language school that served both asylum seekers and those already granted refugee status. The classes were rigorous but human. Teachers spoke slowly but smiled often. I corrected us gently. I could now buy food at the bakery with confidence, ask directions without panicking, and even laugh at some local jokes, although German humor still puzzled me at times. Outside the classes, I built a new routine. I joined a public library, not far from my apartment. It was a quiet, sunlit space, always cleaned and stocked with endless knowledge. The first book I borrowed was about German history. The second, a slim volume on educational philosophy. By the 4th week, I had a backpack full of titles: philosophy, science, sociology, even theology. Reading became my escape, my new prayer. I studied not just to pass the time, but to rebuild the person I thought I had lost. And then something beautiful happened. I went back to reading list from the teacher training course I had dropped out of, and reread the work of those names once alien to me. I think if you have anyone working in the sector of education will know the names that I'm going to read in a minute. Dewey, Fyagosky, Brunner, and Bloom. I read not to pass exams, but because there was none, but with a new sense of purpose. The theories make sense. So I'm going to stop here on this passage, and I'm going to add very quickly onto the next one. So this is a passage where now Sahal imagines his future. Something happened, but he's not giving up. So he's moving up. Basically, he's recalibrating. He's just making sure that wherever he was is now is a slightly different place. Now, the second passage is called the cold that brought the rain. So it's probably they have something happened in between, but something good happened. So this is slightly less gloomier than other passage. I'm going to be quick. The cold was stubborn that December morning, a bitter sort of cold, not the kind that bites and fades, but the kind that sits in your bones, slows you down and makes you linger a little bit longer under the covers, even when the alarm goes off. It had been a long week. Frankfurt was heaving with shoppers. The festive season always brought out crowd in droves. People seemed too eager to clean their cars. People seemed too eager to clean not just their homes, but their cars too, as if its spotless vehicle could help them steer more cleanly into the new year. At the car wash, this meant hours of scraping off thick layers of grime. Snow turned into slush, turned into black ice. Every car that pulled in looked as though it had driven through battlefield. My arms were sore from wielding the pressure of the hose, and the smell of detergent had found its way into my skin. So I'm going to a little bit jump this into the phone. I'm going to jump over a paragraph. The phone rang twice, then died. That was odd. 5 minutes later, it rang again, this time more insistently. I looked at the screen. There was no name, just numbers. A long string of them. So it was an international call. My first thought was of my parents. But they never called me on Saturday. They knew I worked long hours during the week, so Sunday were our time. Still I picked up. Hello. There was a pause. Then a voice vent, almost testing itself against the line. Sahal. Yes, I replied, unsure. Something stirred. Something from a long time ago. It's Nuur. Do you remember me? The name tacked at a closed door in my mind. Then it cracked opened. Nuur, Gududo's older brother from primary school. Yes, he laughed, relieved. Walal, how are you? Nuur, subhanallah, I remember you. How could I forget? How are you, brother? My heart, quiet moment ago, began to pace. He had been much older than me, already on his way to adulthood, when I was still at the primary school. But his younger brother, Gududo, had been in my class. He was a quiet, studious guy and had a mild limp from a bout of a childhood polio. He used to speak of Nuur as if he were a prince studying in a far-off kingdom. One day, he would say, he would come back. He would work for the Ministry of Agriculture. But the Ministry of Agriculture, like the nation, had collapsed into ash and into memory. I've been in Netherlands all this time, Nuur said. Finished my studies, got married to a Dutch woman. We had 2 boys. Life went on. He spoke gently about the ones who hadn't met it. His father, Kukai, the Quran teacher who sat under the big tree near the old school, had passed away, alayhi rahmah. 2 siblings too. Gududo, their frail mother, and his 2 sisters were now in Garissa. I got your number from Gududo, he said. He visited your parents and told them to call you. There is a good news. I straightened up. Good news? A silence fell, then asked, "Do you remember Hindi?" My heart skipped 2 beats. The world spanned, then slowed. My chest tightened. Thoughts crashed into one another like waves into storm. Is she dead? Did she marry someone else? Is she in Europe? Dead or marry, how could either be a good news? I didn't realize that I had not answered until he said, "Are you there, Sahal?" Yes, I'm here," I said, almost joking on my voice. He continued, his voice little more certain now. "Her family met to Finland, sponsored from Ethiopia. There have been a few months there now. Everything around me fell away. She's still in Addis Ababa," he went on. "She was left behind to start with, but they say she's going to join them in the next few months." Then came the part that stopped my heart. The cousin marriage, remember? Didn't happen. It collapsed. Her father refused to force it. I leaned forward, placing my trembling hand on the desk, the phone cradled against my ear. I needed to steady myself. My legs had betrayed me. "You are serious?" I whispered. "Wallahi." "Really?" he said. "I spoke to her family. They give her a number. They give me her number in Addis. She does not know that I have your number. But I had to tell you," he paused, then asked gently, "Do you want it?" I could not speak. I just nodded as if he could see me. He read the numbers slowly, and I scribbled it down with a pen that barely worked in my trembling fingers. That slip paper felt like a map drawn on a holy pageant. Bathed back to something I had buried long ago beneath years of silence, exile, and unspoken grief. I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Noor, and I will encourage all of you to buy the book tonight because you will have something that you can relate with. All the characters are very interesting. My first question is, what inspired you to write Sahal's story, and why was it important for you to talk about the history of Somalia before the war and tell the readers how Somalia was?
That's a very good question. Obviously, the main reason why I wrote this book is really to preserve a memory. Not a memory of a country, but a memory of generation. In the preface, if you read the book, I talk about the generation who were born 1970s. I am one of those generation, part of those generation, early 1970s. This generation, Sahal calls them lucky, but at the same time unlucky generation. Because remember, this is a generation where when they were born, they went to schools, good neighborhoods, safe neighborhoods, and as soon as they completed their education and they were about to join to higher education universities, the war broke out. So therefore, this is a generation that is now old, we're old, but not elderly. People who were born in 1970s, they are now about, mid-50s or early 50s. So they're old but not elderly. So therefore, I wrote to preserve the memory of those generations. This generation are now scattered around the globe. Obviously, I talk about in the preface again, some were left back home, carrying a weight that seldom people see. Some died in the war. Some are now in America, in Europe, in UK, everywhere. So therefore, the aim was to really preserve. And the second aim was to show the second generation, particularly those who are born in the diaspora, the second generation diaspora born, to tell a story of Somalia before the war, how Somalia were, how schools functioned, that we were a nation. Obviously, there's so much going on now in America, if you follow the news, just to show that Somalia has been a country, a functioning country, a beautiful land, and people worked together, and there was a peaceful state. So those are the two things really which is behind my intention of writing the book.
And you highlight that in a very beautiful way, and I think it's important to tell everyone, especially the Americans or Trump, let's say, that Somalia was never a trash and will never be a trash. My second question is about Sahal. Early in the book, you have highlighted Sahal's absent father and the impact it had on his youth. Why was it important to explore that theme?
Good question. Again, Sahal he's Dino, his father. His father, Dino, is often absent. He is a provider, good father, but he's someone that we can call an absent provider. He cares about his family, but he is restless. He moves around. He wants to provide to his family. He's always promising the future. Obviously, something happens in the book, which you will find out. So Sahal's, there's an impact on him, on having a father who is always absent. I mean, there's a story, hopefully there was, if we have a time, there's a letter that I'm working on now, helping Sahal to write, where he really brings and said or uttered memories about his father. So Sahal, it becomes a wound that he carries, this fatherless. He goes to school, he sees his friends, their parents are there, he is not there. It's only his mom, he's with him. So, and fatherless also, it's something that also follows the generation, our generation, the generation of Sahal, and the generation that are now in the diaspora, fatherless. Not necessarily they chose to be absent, but circumstance makes them to be absent from the children. So, it really, the reason is Sahal is confused in the beginning. He forgives his father now. Father comes back. Something happens in the family. There's a loss, which I don't want to talk about it. You can find it in the book. And then this shapes the Sahal's idea of fatherhood. Obviously, he's got a son of his own, Manchester-born son. So he uses this fatherless thing as a theme from the beginning to the end, where not only in a painful way, but also it shapes his understanding of fatherhood and how to look after his son, so that he doesn't feel the way his son doesn't feel the way that he felt when he was young. So really, it's an important theme. Again, I wrote a book, Between a Rock and Hard Place, which also talks about the role of fathers and mothers in the diaspora. So this is a theme that really follows with this form.
Thank you so much. Let's explore the relationship between social class, social mobility, and linguistic tapestry. In the book, you have highlighted a couple of times Somali dialogue and the differences and how that relates to social class. Can you please explain that to us?
Yes, Somalis are very diverse people. And outside them, I think Somalis speak one language, one religion, more or less one culture. It's true. But if you look at the linguistic side of it, the book is set in Baidawa. Sahal was born in a place called Dainunai. Anyone who knows that area will know it. He's a Mai speaker. His mom is Mai speaker. His dad also is a Mai speaker. They from slightly different regions. And then the dialogue, you will see it, even some of the letters that Sahal's dad sends to him while he was in Germany, it's actually signed in Mai. You will see like, we got the money this month. Obviously translated in English, but there's a lot of dialogue. There's a story where a person brings money from Dino, Sahal's father, and he speaks of Mahatri. But still, Sahal's mom understands of Mahatri. But they speak Mai. She replies to Mai, and he speaks to Mahatri. They all understand each other, but they stick with their own tongue. So it talks about, really, it gives a lesson of diversity, how Somalia are diverse. under the umbrella of Somaliness. So this theme was very important. It shows the color, and also for me, it was to honor the characters. I mean, obviously, names. If you look at Lule, you've asked me this question. I think you will see names like Lule, Sido, Dino, Sule, Sonkre. All these things is a name with regional dialect. You can see that, but they're all interesting. Just to honor we Somalis how we are. Visit every character. Of course, you have Uncle Hutle, who is not obviously he's a Mahatiri speaker. You have Jabril, who's Hindi's father, who's also a northern guy, a bureaucrat who speaks of Mahatiri. But it's just to honor the characters and where they're from, and to show an external reader that Somalis are not necessarily the one. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think I really like that part, the fact that you explained that Somalis are not monolithic community. I think that was very important. And also I like the names as well. And can you please talk about the role of memory and community in shaping Sahal's identity, both before and after the war?
Good point. Memory is everything, really. The book is all about memory. It's about remembering. And it's also about looking memory. It's not a universal. It's not a neutral thing. Memory, as I said in the beginning, is political. It's contested. One is who, first of all, writes the memory? Who will capture the memory? Who has the role of capturing the memory, of recording the memory? Again, when you have memory back home, childhood, whatever that is, what type of memory you want to hold on to? Which one you want to let go? Do memories value equal? So the reason why I wrote and I concentrated on memory is memory also gives Sahal and other characters some kind of self-preservation. So they create their own identity. Wherever he goes, he sticks with his memory, remembering Baidawa, remembering where he was, remembering the schools that he went to, the people he have had as friendship. Holding on to that gives him a memory. Again, he's not sticking on that. You will see that he's also looking forward. He is not really nostalgia. He's not nostalgic. He's not thinking only memory. But he uses memory to curve out, keep his identity, remember what he wants to remember, forget what he wants to forget, and keep life going on.
And which part of the book resonates you the most, or was most emotionally challenging to write?
Okay, she has selected good questions. The book obviously is a very emotional book. It talks about a kid who grows up and you know in a very rural area, born in a rural area, grows in Baidawa, with absent father, mom who's a very stoic, hardworking, who never talks about family issues, who never complains about her husband's absence. But he also has a lot of supportive. He has, although he loses his grandma early on, I don't want to talk about that because obviously I don't want to spoil the book. But he, so what really resonates me as a writer, using Sahal's voice to tell the story, is the relationship between Sahal and Hindiye. You will see that. A very stable, respectful relationship. That's one. Hindiye also is someone who's also I resonate with. And so that really is. And also how Sahal overcomes challenges. He has a lot of issues all the time. I mean, in Baidawa, in Dadaab, in Germany, he goes through quite a lot of disappointment. So the way he recovers from those setbacks resonates with me. The most challenging one is when the death, whenever you talk about loss, and there's a few losses. So particularly, I don't know, do I need to say that? I mean, the death of his father, okay? that's also is a bit emotional. And the last chapter, which is the one before The Light We Leave Behind, which is about legacy. There's a chapter, the epilogue was a very challenging emotionally to write that. Okay, you will see that it says what remains of us. So it's an epilogue, and it happens 4 years after the story finishes. So you look back, you take yourself away from the whole story, and then you look back from 4 years in advance. So you travel, not necessarily travel, but you travel in time, and then you look back the story. A lot has happened. So it's called The Light We Live. It's called What Remains of Us. So Sahal looks back 4 years of loss, of memory, of resilience, of becoming. So that was really a very challenging write-ups.
Thank you so much. I'll just combine two questions. What does it mean to lose home? And why is it important to humanize refugees and displaced people before labeling them?
Good. Losing home, by the way, is not about only losing a place. Sahal talks about home all the time, but he's not necessarily talking about Dainunai or Baidawa or Marka, where he goes to school. But he talks about losing home is not only losing a home, a place, but losing a culture, identity. Once you lose your home, you lose also your culture and identity. It goes with it. So he talks about that, not a physical. In fact, he talks about what is it like to remember a place that does not even exist. I mean, if I go back to my, let's say, personally, as a writer, not Sahal's character, if I go back again to where I was born in Bakol. My friend sitting over there, he knows where I was born. I think we were born in the same place. If I go back to the place I was born, I won't be able to actually know where my house is now. The entire neighborhood is just completely vanished. I went to primary school in Baidawa. There was a school called, whoever went to Marian, I think might know Baidawa. There's a school called Busley, my primary school, back in the 80s, early 80s. Busley never exists now. It doesn't exist now. So there's a question, okay, what does it now means to remember a place that doesn't even exist now? Mogadishu exists, but Mogadishu exists as a name. All the districts is completely different. Roads is different. So what does that mean? Remembering a place that does not even exist. So to humanize also is once you lose a home, that also stays with you. So wherever you go, the lost home comes flooding back to you. Again, we come back to the memory. So and it never leaves to children too, because remember the second generation who are born in the diaspora, they still have that trauma, whether that is bad or good. They still have that loss with their parents. So even the second generation feels some sense of loss because their parents always experience that and go through that.
And like for the first generation and the second generation, is it only enough to carry on those memories and transfer to your children, maybe who have never seen or experienced what Somalia was?
No, it's not enough actually, but obviously people who write diaspora, I consider myself someone who writes the diaspora studies and experiences. I don't think it's enough. It is enough verbally to tell your offsprings, diaspora-born kids, but I think what's important is to at least capture in a way that is less self-orientalist. In other words, less dramatizing, less dehumanizing. So talking about back home, there was no running water. If you talk about your own background memory to your children, that lights were not running, there was no running water, roads were not kept, schools were very bad. What you're doing is actually you're dehumanizing your memory. So if that continues to them, what you're doing is you're creating this Edward Said's argument of self-orientalism, making sure that this is the gaze, the Western gaze, this is what the Western wants to hear, the Western audience. So it's not enough, but I think we need to write down in a way that is neutral and is in a way that is actually authentic.
Thank you so much. What does this Sahal's story reveal about the long-term impact of war on children and adults?
Well, it reveals a very chaotic world. It reveals that a trauma that never leaves us. It reveals that the need to collect our memory, to capture in a text tradition, with oral tradition, we talk. There's so much gerar, so much gabi, but I think we need to move on to now text tradition to ensure that we capture, and we capture in a way that does not really, again, I'm going to revisit the word orientalizing ourselves, making sure that we have authentic stuff. So really it's just to capture authentically.
And that's very important, to capture authentically. So my last question is, what are you planning to write next?
Well, I mean, I had 3 years of a roller coaster up and down. This is my first novel. Obviously, I wrote non-fiction books, and anyone thinking about writing a novel from a non-fiction genre, you've got to be very careful. It's a tough world out there. Even the language is very difficult. Obviously, I'm a second language writer. I remember one of my editors commenting when I submitted some draft chapters. He said, "No, your grammar is always perfect, impeccable. Your English is always good. I understand what you write, but do you speak another language?" And I say, "Of course, English is my second or even third." And I wasn't offended because he said, "I always see that you speak another language, and you speak another language as a mother tongue." And I say, "Of course, I speak another language as a mother tongue. I'm a second language writer." So however you think you can master the language, it's not your language, by the way. Psychologist says the language you dream in and the language you swear in is your mother tongue. I don't think that's true. I swear in English, and I don't swear a lot, but I swear in English, and I dream in English actually. But I don't think English is my language. English is my second language, or maybe third or fourth, maybe. Okay, just to answer your question is, I always write things I don't often share. There's a lot of things I don't share. Some of them are not very good. Some are okay. But now I am actually helping Sahal to write a collection of letters. And he called them Letters to My Father. So Sahal is still recovering from the grief, from the memory that his father wasn't there. His mom was always with him. His mom was very kind, stoic, and never complained about Dino, never complained about the father. So he had so much unsaid thing. And obviously he didn't have opportunity to go back again and to talk to his father. So very quickly, there's a one draft, what I'm going to share with you. You're very lucky actually you came tonight. And this is one of the letters that he's writing. So this is letters, it's called unsent letters. In fact, the final part of the book, he says, now I finished my writing. Hindi is now doing good, he's doing well. And he starts writing stuff which is not really very, it's not a rigorous work. It's not intellectually grinding. So, but these letters are what he calls posthumous dialogue. So his father's passed away, alayhi rahmah. He is now posthumously dialoguing with him for his own sake. And he calls them portable therapy. I must warn you, this is a very emotional letter. Okay? So, dear Abu Dino, this is one of the letters. I'm writing to you about a day from my childhood that stayed with me for many years. He knows that he won't get any reply because his dad is not here. But he doesn't need reply. He actually talks about it. He says, I'm not asking reply. These are unsent. Letters will not be sent, but it's a collection. It's about 50 letters. So hopefully they will make some kind of a novella, not necessarily a big novel, but hopefully. And I hope, if time permits, inshallah ta'ala, they might be ready next year. So I'm helping Sahal to write those letters. But these letters also, they are universal. So anyone who has something unsaid, but not bitter, whether that is spouse or family member or parent or friend, we argue that, Sahal argue that this also could be a portable therapy, where they can read and then they just writing stuff. Okay, so he says, Dear Abedino, I'm writing to you about a day from my childhood that stayed with me for many years. It was the day I received the Student of the Year award in my primary school in Baidawa. That's Busley. When they called me, the student clapped. And for a moment, I felt the whole world was opening for me. I looked around the hall, hoping maybe you had returned early from your business trip. So Dino used to go a lot of business trips. I hoped to see you standing near the back, smiling at me. But only Hoyo was there. She clapped with so much pride, holding the certificate like it was something very precious. For a long time, I wished you had been there too. Not for a big reason, just because every boy wants his father to see him on a day like that. I carried that small sadness quietly, without knowing how to express it. Now, when I look back, I understand things better. So now he's not bitter, he's just forgiving his father. You were traveling to provide for us. You were doing what many fathers in your generation believed was their duty, to work hard, even if it means being far away from your children. Life was not simple, and you were trying your best with what you had. Today, I wanted to tell you that I forgive you. I forgive that distance. I don't hold it within a pain anymore. I see the full picture now. So now Sahal is a father, he's his own son, he knows life, providing, being away. He just recalculates everything in his head and he understands the bigger picture. Not only the empty seat in the school hall, I believe if circumstances were different, you would have been very proud of me that day. Hoyo carried both your pride and her own. But in my heart, I also imagine you clapping for me in your own way, even if you were far away. I keep this memory now with softness, just a son remembering his father, understanding him, and allowing both of us to be human. Your son, Sahal.
And I think that's why you beautifully write and capture the emotions deep inside, because for me, Sahal is one of the main characters that I relate with the most. And I think if you are a father here tonight, make sure that you're always staying with your children. It doesn't matter, take them to school, be there for them. Because I remember as a young child, I always used to say, where's my father? I wish he was here to clap for me. So that's why, because now thinking about it, of course I forgave my father, but I always think about, I wish I would have been a better person or a stronger person if my father was there for me. So I think that's why it's very important for the Somali fathers to be there for their children. It doesn't matter if the mothers, they are not together, just make sure that you don't divorce your children as well. Thank you so much, Dr. Noor, for making sure that you tell the stories of Somalis, but also Somali diaspora that many of us could relate with. We'll take a couple of questions before you buy the book, maybe 2 or 3. Please raise your hand if you have questions.
And I just wanted to ask you two specific questions. First is, how hard was it to choose the names of the characters you have chosen it? I can see they're from a specific area in Somalia, as you explained it in Baya Bukol. How hard was it to choose from the main character, Sahal, to Dino, to other characters you chose, from the rest of other names of Somalis you could have chosen from? And secondly, the second question I have is, how hard or how brave was it to choose Dino, the dad of Sahal, to be an absentee dad or absentee father, considering there is a negative connotation within Somali community of absentee-minded or absentee fathers. As a result of that, we've got so many dysfunctional families. And the negative connotation is of however good provider he was, and you mentioned that, but the fact is that there is a negative connotations that comes with, or that evokes the idea of absentee father. And how difficult was it to choose Dino as absent father? Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Nuur, aad baad mahadsantahay runtii. Waana jeclahay runtii waqti badan inaan qaato oon kula joogo, laakiin safar Leicester baan ka yimid waa la socotaa. But it's great to be here. I think one is for the encouragement, really, this book, particularly Sahal. There's so many things I shared with him. Because laba qof aad isu naqaanay baan nahay, marka I thought you were actually talking about me, because when I studied agriculture, secondly, I'm from Holland. Marka, I was really impressed with how you were connecting all these stories. If we don't write, someone else will write, and they will write on the basis of their own interest. Yeah? As a Somalis, we have to encourage, and I'll give you an example. Mohammed Sideways, you know Mohammed Sideways, yeah? He's a very famous Somali journalist. There is a particular emphasis that he writes about the Somali way, you know, a narrative. If we don't build that narrative that reflect on our own history and memories, otherwise other people will manipulate that in a very negative way. I have a son, 15 years old, who keeps me awake at night. One of the things he said, and I really want to check this truly. When he writes Somalia in Somali way in Google, he will see all these beautiful beaches, you know, landscapes, children celebrating and eat, very delightful faces. But when he writes in English, Somalia, you all see destruction, destroyed buildings, famine, all these negative connotations, yeah? So we really need to change that narrative. And I really want to encourage people like us, myself, an academic from Nottingham Trent University. We really need to continue that, yeah? So I have a question. Based on the other two books, which I'm very well aware of, including the parental involvement in education and the role of parents, you mentioned particularly around that parenting absenteeism. I wouldn't call it parent absenteeism because they're two different things, parent absenteeism and parenting absenteeism. How much that actually narrative contributed to the Sahal stories, or whether you had the Sahal stories before you're writing that non-fiction book. The other thing I want to really say, I teach education studies, particularly around refugees and trauma. And one of the things I particularly include in my sessions is about refugees, and I give my own stories instead of using other people's stories. So I actually share my own experience. And interestingly, my students who are predominantly white and girls, the first thing they asked me about my girlfriend, Dutch girlfriend, and where she was. So including love, it actually represents the kind of hidden narrative. And I think I really concur that particular selection. So that's the question I had previously about how the parenting involvement in education related to that. Thank you.
The question that I have is, you mentioned you're an academic, you've written 2 research books. You write a lot privately and you've worked in the academic sector for a while. Why was it important that this story be fiction, be literature? You mentioned that you research to write and it's off your own lived experience, and also is a sort of biography of all the people who've been exiled from Somalia and live as diaspora. So why literature? Why English literature of all things? What did that do for you? And what do you want it to do for us who are reading in that language?
I'll start with how do you have you had difficulties choosing the characters' names? My friend posed that question. Not really, because as Mariam said, I'm from Baidawa, Bokol. So my ancestors might come from somewhere else, but obviously for me, my memory is in those areas. So do you know Sule, Sonkore, Hindie was very easy. Very easy to my heart, very easy to my tongue, on my tongue. So I didn't really have any problem choosing them. In fact, all the non-Somali readers who read the book before the book was published were quite taken back because you have this, Hindie, Dino, Sonkore, that kind of rhythm. So in a nutshell, I dhibaataa kalama kulmin in fact way ii fududay inaan doorto magacyada. And the second question is for absenteeism, absent parent, especially fathers. Yes, it's politically touchy, but I wrote a book about it before, so I developed some kind of a sort of a tough skin. And I know some parents might say, fathers especially, Nuur, you gain حتى fiction كي بعد نقدر بمعطيه كارل صار أنت نيذا. But again, it's something that we need to write, because if we allow non-Somalis to write those things about us, about experience, actually they will write badly. They will write something that does not represent us. So I thought, in fact, when I wrote my first book, with Marine just talked about Between Rock and Hard Place, Muhammad Harari actually is up. You can get it in Somali as well. In that book, one of the parents actually were coming to me and congratulating me in the Minnesota area, because I was actually based in the US scenario. So I've done some research. Some of them were very angry in the beginning, and when they read the book, Somali markay book akhriyaan marka hore way ku qabanayaan, laakiin marka dambe markay akhriyaan bay ogaanayaan book inuu wax quman yahay. Marka so it's something that we need to get out there. Again, remember, it's constructive, because Sahal tells his father, but he's not telling his father in a bad way. I mean, I read the letter. He's writing a lot of letters. He loves his father, but he's telling him posthumously, now he's passed away, that this is what he wanted. So for him, this is a lesson for his son. He now has a son, and he wants to not repeat the same trend. Yeah, he wants back the trend. So I hope that answers his question. Now, Dr. Tarrah, absent parents, absentees. I think I'm glad you've seen already yourself in the book. Hopefully when you read, you will see even more. He went to Holland. He studied agriculture. So I think you're very close to Nuno. And you're not only the Nuno, but there's many Nunos actually in a Dutch environment, and you will see that. So the question is, absent fathers, it's a theme that goes through. And it's something that, again, I revisit in a fiction way, but you have now Sahal's voice. So initially I was talking about this through a non-fiction, research-based, empirical work. But now it's through the voice of Sahal. So Sahal is telling, this is something that is even happening, used to happen in Somalia. So it's something that generation before this generation, diaspora born, were even having the issue with, okay? But it's in a good light. It's in a good light. It tells the story, and it tells the fathers what happened, and it tells that the generation we are now, the 70s, like me, who were born in the 1970s, they're not bitter. even if their fathers were there. I mean, in the letter he says, finally he said, I understand, now I can see the bigger picture. So he understands it, yeah? Okay? And the question of why write fiction, I think it's a very good question, really, to be honest with you. Someone came to me before I wrote this book, and he said, Noor, I think you might write your, why don't you write your bio? Sorry, no, your memoir, biography. And I looked at him as if he just lost his mind. Because for me, I will never write my memoirs, ever. Maybe when I'm 90s and about to die, maybe I'll write. But I will never write my memoir and be there, yeah? It could be, if it is, if the memo is going to be read at my funeral, fine, no problem. But I won't write memo. So the point was, okay, how do you get then what do you want to tell without getting yourself into trouble? There was a story where every families have one writer in them. And if that family member touches biography or memoirs, then there will be a problem in that family. Because that person will tell a story that the family might not necessarily like it. So for me, fiction, and remember, no book is a fiction, by the way. You have to remember that. All the books in the history, fiction books, I mean, if the characters, I mean, there's a lot of characters who are really true characters, but they're not necessarily the real names. So the reason why I wrote fiction this time, I turned into fiction, is to perhaps maybe, you know, writing in academia is uptight. You're very tight. You have to provide references. You have to provide evidence. You have to back up. It's like providing. You provide your thesis, and then you write antithesis, and then you write the synthesis, and then you conclude. So you go through the circle. It's like Hegelian way of writing things. But in this one, you're free. So I talk about Dino. Who's Dino? I talk about Sonkore. Who's Sonkore? Nobody's going to ask me who Sonkore is. I don't have to provide any evidence. But it allows me as an outlet to write a fiction. And I think, are you trying to write a book? Not now, okay. I would suggest, if you want to write a book, write a fiction. Honestly, yeah? Okay, I hope that answers your question.
Thank you again. Thank you so much for coming tonight. The books are here. Please feel free to grab a copy or two to give it to your friend. The author will be here to sign for you. You can take pictures with him. Thank you so much again for coming tonight.